I want to begin experientially. You know, when we say we have the image and likeness of God inside of us, we tend to picture that romantically, that somewhere inside of you there's stamped this beautiful icon of the Trinity that may well be there. That's not the way you experience it. God, as we'll see, God is fire. God is energy. God is divine energy, and that's inside of us, and that's going to make everything that's great inside of us, and it's going to be the root of about 98% of our struggles. So I want to pick it up first experientially. How we feel the image and likeness of God inside of us, how we experience that day to day. It begins this way. I call it our congenital discontent, okay, in its deep root. At the very center of our experience, in all of us, there lies a profound disquiet, a discontent, an appetitiveness, an appetite, a non-silence. There's an agitation. And this agitation, as I said, lies at the center, not at the edges. That's not a minute distinction. You know, it's like Henry Nouwen, the great spiritual writer, used to say. Henry Nouwen used to express this well. Nouwen says, you know, you aren't a restful person who occasionally gets restless. You're not a satisfied person who occasionally gets dissatisfied. You're not a person who lives in habitual solitude and once in a while you experience agitation. It's the reverse. We are restless people who sometimes find rest. We are people who live in disquiet who sometimes find solitude. We're lonely people who sometimes find intimacy. Notice where the default lies. See, we're restless people and we sometimes find rest. So that the restlessness, the disquiet, that's at the center of our experience, not at the edges. Now, that's experienced in countless ways. I just want to give you expressions of that just for flavor, but important because it helps us to understand it. I wrote 2 books on this. So I originally wrote The Restless Heart, and when I did that, which was part of a thesis I wrote, that was the popular book that came off it, but I just tried to research that in poets and authors and writers and philosophers and mystics and so on, how they would express that. And there's just so many countless wonderful expressions of that. The one I begin the holy longing with were from Plato. Plato says, we're fired into life with a madness that comes from the gods. It's quite an expression. We're fired into life with a madness that comes from the gods. And he said that madness has us believe that we can have a great love and that we can become immortal and that we can contemplate God himself. Now, I want to look at that expression with you a little bit. First of all, I love the verb there. Notice what he says, that we're fired into life. He doesn't say, we're born serenely. You wake up in your crib, contemplatively survey your options. No, you wake up crying, you're hungry, you're thirsty, you're missing things and so on. He said, so we're fired into life. He said, with a madness, but the madness comes from the gods. It's not human madness, it's divine madness. See, the image and likeness inside of us. What does he mean by that? Well, Plato was a Stoic. And today we use the word Stoicism. And we use the word Stoic for somebody who, they can endure suffering and they can tough it up and endure suffering. It comes from that, but the Stoics were a religious cult. And they were very close to Christianity. That's why Augustine, who was originally a Platonist, could easily move into Christianity. In fact, what Augustine did is he simply took Christianity and Platonism and ran them through a blender. And what came out is Christian theology for the next 1,700 years, But see, the Stoics, the Platonists, they were religious people. It was a religious cult, and they believed that our souls were little chips of divine fire that somehow came off the great, fire in the sky. And it would come down and get into bodies, but then your body would be restless and knocked all over the planet because you had this little chip of divine fire inside of you. You had a little god or goddess inside of you who would make it pretty difficult for you to ever be satisfied on this planet. Not a bad description at all. So you have a little chip of divine fire. The madness comes from the gods and it makes you believe that, you're more than an animal. It makes you believe, you can have a great love. You can do something that's immortal. You can contemplate the divine. That gives you great ambitions, great visions. It also gives you great problems.